George "Red Buck" Waitman was one of the most ruthless criminals in Oklahoma back when it was known as Indian Territory. Waitman was believed to have originally hailed from Texas and got his nickname due to his fiery red hair. By the time he ended up in Oklahoma, he had already become a horse thief and a murderer, allegedly having taken the lives of 4 men and being willing to do so for a mere $50. He was one of the most dreaded outlaws in Indian Territory, and it was said that he took pleasure in killing and often boasted about his crimes. In 1889, he got apprehended by Heck Thomas for stealing horses and was subsequently sent to prison. After serving 3 years, he was released and returned to Oklahoma, where he quickly joined forces with the Doolin gang. On September 1st, 1893, Red Buck was involved in the Ingalls, Oklahoma shootout with the Doolin gang, resulting in the deaths of 3 U.S. deputy marshals. During one incident while riding with Bill Doolin and his gang, Red Buck allegedly attempted to ambush and assassinate Bill Tilghman by shooting him in the back. However, Doolin, known for his sense of fairness despite his criminal lifestyle, prevented Red Buck from killing the U.S. deputy marshal, stating that Tilghman deserved a more honorable confrontation. On April 3, 1895, Red Buck took part in a train robbery in Dover, Oklahoma, alongside the Doolin gang. Although the gang managed to escape, a posse quickly pursued them. When the lawmen caught up with the outlaws, a fierce gunfight erupted, resulting in the death of Tulsa Jack Blake. Red Buck's horse was shot from under him, but he quickly mounted behind George Bitter Creek Newcomb, enabling the outlaws to outrun the pursuing posse. By this point, Red Buck had become a well-known figure to every U.S. deputy marshal in the territory, and he openly challenged them to attempt his arrest. However, few lawmen believed the reward was worth the risk of apprehending him. Following the escape from the Dover train robbery, the gang sought refuge at the home of a Baptist minister named Godfrey, demanding a meal and planning to steal his horses. When Godfrey objected, Red Buck fatally shot him. Doolin was so incensed by this unnecessary killing that he expelled Red Buck from the gang and went into hiding to avoid the vicious outlaw. Meanwhile, Red Buck continued his murderous activities and was contracted to assassinate a prominent rancher named Perry Parrish in Greer County. However, the rancher learned of the impending attack and managed to save himself. In September 1895, rancher Gus Holland's luck took a turn for the worse. When Red Buck and a man named Charlie Smith attempted to rustle Holland's cattle and the rancher raised objections, Waitman ended up killing him. A few days later, the outlaws tried to peddle the stolen cattle to a rancher in Clio Springs. However, when the rancher recognized Holland's brand, he declined the offer. That night, Red Buck tried to murder the rancher, who managed to survive the assault but refrained from further action out of fear for his life. Subsequently, Red Buck assembled a new gang of outlaws, primarily comprised of men from Texas, and they started terrorizing the Tologa area. His gang included Joe Beckman, an ex-lawman from Motley, Texas, who had left the state due to murder and extortion charges, along with others like Hills Loftus and Elmer Kid Lewis. Nevertheless, U.S. Deputy Marshal Joe Ventioner was also present in the region, determined to cleanse it of its lawless elements. Red Buck and his gang made numerous attempts on Ventioner's and other lawmen's lives, but were unsuccessful. When the gang carried out a robbery at a store in Arapahoe, Oklahoma, located 30 miles south of Tologa, they were quickly pursued by U.S. Deputy Marshal Joe Ventioner and his posse. However, when the gang crossed into Texas, they were beyond the jurisdiction of Oklahoma law, prompting the summoning of the Texas Rangers to confront them. In confrontations with the Rangers, Joe Beckman lost his life, and Red Buck sustained serious injuries but managed to evade capture. Elmer Kid Lewis and Hills Loftus managed to escape. Lewis, however, met a grim fate when he was lynched in Wichita Falls, Texas, following a bank robbery and the murder of a banker. Loftus, on the other hand, disappeared without a trace. Red Buck returned to Oklahoma, where he received care to nurse him back to health and quickly teamed up with another Texas outlaw named George Miller. At one point, a local resident named W.D.W. Glover, who lived in a dugout near Arapahoe, initially sheltered the fugitives. However, after a couple of days, he had a change of heart and decided to cash in on the rewards offered for their capture. He tipped off the Indian police in Arapahoe about their whereabouts and led a posse to their hideout. But Redbuck shot and killed him, allowing the two outlaws to escape. When U.S. Deputy Marshal Joe Ventioner got wind of Redbuck's return to the area, he, along with Deputy Marshals William Holcomb and Bill Quillen, resumed their pursuit of the outlaws. Tracking them to Custer County, they discovered the men were hiding on a farm owned by Dolph Picklesheimer, known for befriending outlaws. On the morning of March 4th, 1896, an attempt to apprehend the men resulted in a firefight, leading to Redbuck's death at the hands of Joe Ventioner. In retaliation, George Miller shot Ventioner in the abdomen. Holcomb then fired at Miller, hitting his cartridge belt, causing several rounds to explode, blowing off his right hand at the wrist and the 3 middle fingers of his left hand. Picklesheimer was arrested and charged with harboring fugitives, and George Miller was sent to prison in Texas, serving a brief sentence. Waitman was buried in Arapahoe Cemetery, Oklahoma. After Miller's release, he had his non-functional hand fitted with a steel hook, earning him the moniker Hooky Miller. He continued a life of crime for several years before undergoing a transformation and becoming a U.S. Deputy Marshal himself. Tragically, he met his end while serving an arrest warrant. In the meantime, U.S. Deputy Marshal Joe Ventioner recovered from his wounds and continued his career as a lawman. After an unsuccessful stint racing horses in Pawnee, Oklahoma, Pierce became a member of the Dalton Gang in the 1890s. Following the tragic events that led to the deaths of most of the gang's members during the Coffeyville, Kansas raid on October 5, 1892, Pierce aligned himself with Bill Doolin's Oklahombers. He took part in several holdups, but his final showdown occurred on May 2, 1895. After the Doolin gang disbanded, Pierce and George Bitter Creek. Newcomb rode to the Dunn Ranch on the Cimarron River. Their purpose was twofold: to visit Newcomb's lover, the renowned Rose of Cimarron, and to collect around $900 owed to Newcomb by Rose's brothers. However, as they neared the house, the two outlaws were caught in an ambush, shot off their horses by Rose's brothers, who sought to claim the substantial bounty on their heads. Both bodies were subsequently taken to Guthrie, but Newcomb was still alive. When he mustered the strength to sit up and request water, he was met with another bullet for his efforts. William Tulsa Jack Blake was an outlaw who rode alongside Bill Doolin and the Oklahombers in Oklahoma. Blake's birth is attributed to Samuel Lee and Mary Etta Elkins Blake around 1859. While his parents were known to have resided in Missouri, the exact location of William's birth remains undisclosed. In the early 1880s, Blake worked as a cowboy in Kansas, but eventually headed south into Oklahoma. By the end of 1892, he had teamed up with Bill Doolin's Wild Bunch. Over the following 2 years, he participated in numerous train and bank robberies alongside other gang members. In September 1893, he played a pivotal role in the gang's shootout with U.S. Marshals in Ingalls, Oklahoma, resulting in the deaths of 3 law enforcement officers. On the night of April 3, 1895, the gang carried out a robbery on a southbound Rock Island train. When a group of 5 men, armed and demanding access, stormed the train, Messenger J.W. Jones initially refused and faced a hail of 20 bullets fired into the car. Jones only relinquished his position when he was struck by stray bullets, sustaining wounds to his wrist and leg. Fearing for the safety of the passengers, he eventually allowed the bandits onto the train. Tulsa Jack and George Redbuck Waitman entered with drawn guns, patrolling the passenger cars, while the others guarded the train's front safe. Tulsa and Red then relieved the passengers of their wallets, watches, and jewelry, making off with $400 in cash and other valuables before riding off into the night. They spent most of the night on the run, successfully evading law enforcement. However, by the following afternoon, U.S. Deputy Marshal William Banks and a posse of 6 men spotted them. The outlaws took a break in a sand basin along the Cimarron River in Major County, Oklahoma, where Banks and his men called them out. In response, Tulsa Jack began firing in their direction, sparking a fierce 45-minute gun battle. The gang held off the marshals as bullets flew, but when Blake attempted to escape from cover, he was shot and killed. The gunfire continued, resulting in 2 more bandits being wounded before the remaining outlaws managed to escape. Deputy William Banks later estimated that over 200 shots were exchanged during the gunfight, with each outlaw armed with 2 revolvers and rifles. The death of Tulsa Jack marked the beginning of a violent end for Bill Doolin's gang, as the remaining members would soon meet their demise or be captured. Roy Dougherty, also known as Arkansas's Tom Jones, was a member of the Doolin gang in Oklahoma and met his demise in a shootout while resisting arrest. Dougherty, born around 1870, was raised in a devoutly religious family in Missouri. While his 2 brothers chose the path of becoming preachers, Roy went against the grain and left home at the young age of 14. Venturing to Oklahoma, he adopted the alias Arkansas's Tom Jones, claiming roots in Arkansas. Initially, he worked as a cowboy, but it wasn't long before he joined Bill Doolin's gang. His capture followed the shootout in Ingalls, Oklahoma on September 1st, 1893. Found guilty of manslaughter, he received a hefty 50-year prison sentence. Thanks to the efforts of his ministering siblings, he managed to secure parole in 1910. He subsequently ran a restaurant in Drumright, Oklahoma for a couple of years. However, he grew restless and headed to Hollywood, California, with aspirations of acting in Western films. When those dreams fell through, he returned to a life of robbery, participating in a bank heist in Neosho, Missouri in 1917. Once more, he was apprehended and imprisoned, but he regained his freedom in 1921. It seemed that rehabilitation eluded him as he committed another bank robbery in Ashbury, Missouri, the same year he was released. He remained a fugitive for the next 3 years, but on August 16, 1924, he was traced to Joplin, Missouri, and met his end in a shootout while resisting arrest.